Welcome to Dashboard Jesus, the podcast where faith meets the fast lane. Whether you're cruising through calm or navigating life's hairpin turns, we're here to help keep your eyes on the road and your heart grounded in God's Word. So buckle up. It's time to ride with a biblical perspective on the journey of life. Here's your host, Peter Heck.
So I don't know when this started, and maybe it's always been a thing in American society, American civilization. I'm just more aware of it today, but I don't know when it began, this bizarre moral instinct that we have in this culture to insist that every culture, every philosophy, every belief system that exists or has ever existed is functionally interchangeable. That Western society isn't of any more value than Iroquois society or Aztec culture or whatever society you want to come up with in the history of mankind. And certainly modern cultures. Everyone is completely legitimate and everyone is completely equal and on the same plane of morality. It is a bizarre moral instinct we have. And here's why I say it's bizarre, because in every other aspect, we understand some ideas are better than others. Some ideas work out better. Some ideas benefit you. Some ideas really stink. That's how you learn what to do and what not to do. We understand that in every area. It stands to reason that some civilizational assumptions, societies are built on different assumptions and different beliefs about core presuppositional issues, the rights of man, what is a human being, and what are they entitled to, and all of those things. Every society, every civilization has those assumptions. And the idea that they can answer it differently and yet everyone be right is flatly absurd. It's one of the most idiotic things that Western societies have adopted and started believing. And I know academia is full of it. Multiculturalism is the name of the game, and it's been that way, I'm sure, since the 1980s and 1990s at least, and that's the extent of my knowledge or personal experience. I can't really even say the 80s. I was just a wee lad and wasn't really up on what the civilizational philosophies were at the time. I just know multiculturalism has been around for a long time. But right now, what you can do is you can see a case study if you look at Europe. And it's starting to be that you can look at case studies here in the United States in various areas. But the case study is what happens when a Western civilization, a country that is Western, and all that entails, and that, by the way, that doesn't mean white. It doesn't have to be a racial thing, but a Western culture begins adopting or begins importing millions of people who have radically different assumptions about women, about law, about religious authority, about dissent, and whether people are allowed to disagree, about pluralism. People are allowed to believe and worship different things. When you begin importing millions of people that have radically different views than what you have always had in your Western culture, do we think that there are not going to be social consequences? And do we think that whatever the social consequences are, if we accept that there will be, that they are equally valid and equally good and equally beneficial? I just find this to be one of the most flabbergasting things, where it's almost as though even discussing this, we think is impolite. We think that there's something immoral or something wrong about even having that conversation. Well, who do you think you are? That's the mentality that is turned. Well, who I think I am is somebody that thinks and understands that there are consequences to every action. And so what are the consequences going to be, and do we want those consequences? There is a chart that has been circulating online, and I saw it after Glenn Beck of The Blaze, and he's a radio host and all of that. Several of you know Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck had retweeted something on the platform formerly known as Twitter. He'd retweeted this thing, And it was a chart, and I'll just put it up here on the screen if you're watching the podcast. What it does, it compares rape statistics. Okay, we know what rape is. Rape statistics across parts of Europe between these years, between the year 2000 and the year 2023. Now, what happened in between 2000 and 2023? That's what we're going to get at, but let me first explain the data. There is a dramatic increase in the amount of reported rapes and sexual assaults in the following 4 countries between those years. In 2 decades, England, Wales, Germany, and France all Western civilization, all of them see dramatic leaps in the amount of reported rapes. There is one European country, Poland, that is included in this study. It has far different results. You are seeing significant decline in the amount of reported rapes. So what gives? What's going on? You can't say, well, it's now 2023 and there's just this patriarchal, women-oppressing philosophy that is sweeping through Europe right now, and it's just every civilization's dealing with it. Every culture is dealing with it. Every country is dealing with it. That's not true. Poland is not. It's going in the other direction. So what happened? This would be the next logical question. What happened between 2000 and 2023 in those countries of England, Wales, France, and Germany that could account for all of this? Now, there's probably a number of different things. Maybe there's been an increase in the sale of microwave ovens. Whereas in Poland, they're not selling as many microwave ovens. In Wales and England and Germany and France, boom, all kinds of microwaves. Or maybe there's an increase in homeschooling. There's more homeschoolers in England and Wales and Germany and France than there was in 2000. So what I'm getting at is correlation doesn't necessarily prove causality. Okay? So I'm establishing that. I'm going to establish something else. I'm going to establish that crime statistics are messy, that reporting standards change through time and legal definitions evolve, and you have victims that become more willing to report crimes now than they were before, perhaps. Population growth matters. There's all of these things. So there's complexity involved in this. But there is also another statistical difference between Poland and those 4 countries. The countries of England, Wales, Germany, and France have seen massive amounts of migrants from Muslim countries come into their country in the last 2 decades. Poland has a much different immigration structure and has not seen a marked increase in the Muslim population in their countries. Now see, even me saying this, people are going to get their dander up, and people are going to go, and I don't understand that. I do not understand why immediately we think, well, you think all Muslims are rapists. No, that's not what that says. That's not what that's saying at all. But don't use that argument, well, you think all Muslims are rapists, to deter people from thinking through the consequences of embracing civilizations that have remarkably different views on women, on law and order, on things like honor killings, religious authority. Don't stop that conversation or try to strangle it by hurling accusations of racism. It's not a race issue. Muslims can be different races. We're talking about the culture. Is that in part what has led to this? Well, the reality is, even though this seems like it's forbidden, wisdom is now forbidden and we have to live in a state of denial. We've already seen examples of this. Do you remember the Cologne sexual assaults during New Year's? This was back 10 years ago, like 2015, 2016, when this happened. And it shocked Europe because you had all of this going on. Here's why it shocked Europe, because in 2015 and 2016, people started having to have this really uncomfortable conversation because German authorities are reporting large numbers of assaults and harassments, all these incidents happening around the central train station. Germany starts reporting this, and the suspects were identified across the board as migrants, recent migrants, or asylum seekers from North Africa and the Middle East, Muslim nations. So we already had this happen in 2015 and 2016. But the conversation, the discussion was stifled. People were uncomfortable with it. But Cologne isn't the only place that was going on. You have all kinds of European examples of the conflict between Western societal values and Muslim values, the values that are taught in Islam. And I mentioned some of them. The intimidation of dissidents or ex-Muslims. Okay? In Western society, you don't see that, at least not on the scale that you have of people being threatened or killed because they converted away from Islam. That is acceptable in Islamic society. Forced marriages. Those aren't a thing in the West, at least not traditionally, not culturally, but it is in Muslim nations. The coercive family structures that exist, they don't really exist in the West. They do in Muslim cultures. Honor-based violence, they don't really exist in the West, but they do in Muslim societies. So the point of all of this is we can continue to ignore these types of things because we think it's polite to do that. But let's understand there are going to be consequences. Is England or is Wales, France, Germany? If the marked increase in sexual assaults against women that has happened in the last 20 years is tied to the importation of migrants who have different views on the rights of women, on sexual coercion, these societies that have these different assumptions about those key principles, if there's a correlation, and if that is at the root of all of this, are we thankful in England, Wales, France, and Germany that we were polite about the whole thing? Is that the bigger sin? Is that the bigger concern, that we remain polite about this stuff that's going on? I mean, I'm looking at some of these realities, and I'm also seeing comments from people when people post this kind of a chart. Oh, you just hate all Muslims. No. Hatred is precisely the wrong instinct. Listen, I had a doctor for the longest time, a favorite doctor I've ever had. For many of the years of my life, his name was Sid, or S-Y-E-D, Hussein. So on my prescription bottles, it said S. Hussein. He was Muslim, and he was great. He loved the United States. He went to Saudi Arabia to do the Muslim pilgrimage. Came back and said it was fun and all, but I miss the United States. I miss the freedom here and all of that. Listen, if you have a Muslim who rejects violence and desires peace and wants to raise a family and believes in and will affirm democratic norms, they simply want to live stable lives, that's fantastic. And in the West, we respect that. There's a pluralistic society going here, and we're good with that. That's wonderful. But human dignity belongs to all people, but human dignity does not require intellectual dishonesty. Ideas matter, and theology matters, and civilization matters, and societies are allowed to make determinations about whether all moral frameworks produce identical assumptions about those principles: liberty and dissent and equality and pluralism and the relationship between religion and political power. All of those are remarkably different in Islamic societies. Every single one of those. So you don't have to be an anti-Muslim. You don't have to be somebody who is that hates Islam. You don't have to be somebody like that to say, this will fundamentally change Western society, and we don't want to fundamentally change Western society. That isn't the direction that we want to go. There is an element of all of this that you can tell I get frustrated by it. I want to beat my head against a wall, not because it's happening to America the way that it is in other places. I'm not a nativist, but it's frustrating to me the way the conversation and thinking is stifled, and the way that we just bury our heads in the sand because we think it's the right thing to do. No, the right thing to do is to stand for what is right and what is righteous. And we can have ideas about that and say, these people here do not agree with us. And therefore, importing large numbers of them is not something that we want to do. That isn't anti-biblical. That's not anti-kind. That isn't anti-nice. It's common sense. And there is an element of this that really, really stands out if we're willing to think about it. Right here in the West, there's a contradiction that simply has to be pointed out. And I'll do it when we come back for more of the Dashboard Jesus podcast right after this.
There are countless books telling Christians how to change the world, build influence, gain power, conquer the culture. But Rebellious is not one of those books. In it, Peter Heck makes a different case. We don't need a better plan. We need to obey the one Jesus gave us. Faithfulness, holiness, discipleship. Stop trying to hijack the world's cheap version of power. Start trusting God to work through lives fully surrendered to Him. Rebellious by Peter Heck. Available at peterheck.com and dashboardjesus.net today. Discounts available for Pit Crew members.
Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foresight Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance, and each experience will differ. Thanks for tuning into the Dashboard Jesus podcast. Let me say this up front. This show doesn't run on fumes. It runs on good people. People I know, people I trust, people who have stood behind this podcast and other ventures of mine for years. First Rab Water, the team I trust for all of our home water purification. If you care about what's coming into your home and into your family, you need to talk to them. They've taken great care of us, and I recommend them without hesitation. I'm also grateful for friends like Jonathan at Hartman Family Farms, my bank, First Farmers Bank and Trust, my lawn care team at Harper Implement, Norris Insurance, who make sure we're covered when life gets unpredictable, and McGonigal GM Buick, the folks I trust whenever it's time to buy or lease a vehicle. Then there's J. Watson Creations, the jeweler I go to for custom pieces for the people that I love. Stevens Machine, one of my longest-standing supporters. Terrell's Auto Service, who keeps our vehicles running. The Wyman Group, my go-to real estate team. And organizations like the Indiana Family Institute and Indiana Right to Life. People doing the hard work of standing for faith, family, and life in the public square. These aren't random sponsors. These are relationships, and I'm grateful for every single one of them. If you support them, you're helping support this podcast, and I truly appreciate it. Welcome back here to the Dashboard Jesus podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And I never got around to welcoming you in that first segment. I just hit the ground running, but that's fine. Make sure you get over to the website, dashboardjesus.net. It's dashboardjesus.net, and get your hands on a copy of Rebellious, the new book that is out, and I hope will be a blessing to you in your Christian walk in understanding how we can really impact society and culture. And it's not anything new. Is like I always used to try to come up with strategies and ideas, and Jesus already told us exactly how to do it. So the book is full of scripture references and all of those things, and hopefully making sense out of some pretty simple stuff that Jesus taught. Simple to understand, difficult to do. So pick up a copy of Rebellious if you got time. So here is the incomprehensible, to me, contradiction that's happening in the West. Like, I really struggle with this. I struggle with people pretending, I guess, that they don't see this. I don't know. But we live in a society, in the United States, we live in a culture that is enthralled with women's rights. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. We scrutinize workplace language so that women do not feel uncomfortable in the workplace. The workplace is every bit for the woman as it is for a man. By the way, I'm not actually condemning any of this. I'm acknowledging what our society believes currently. Entertainment. Women's sports are just as important and just as valuable as men's sports. Until the transgender issue has altered that in some way. But no, women's sports, WNBA players should be paid just as well as NBA players. It doesn't matter that more people watch men's sports. That's only because they're exposed to it more. This is the kind of stuff that we say and we're expected to believe. Why? Because our culture is enthralled with the feminist idea and women's rights. Dating norms. It's now taboo for a man to open a door for a woman, for a man to assume that he is going to be the one that leads the relationship. You don't do that anymore. Hiring practices. We're very cautious about those. Advertising. Advertisements have to have an equal balance, if not tipped more towards women than towards men. You have entire academic departments in institutions and universities that are trying to analyze the subtle ways that power dynamics affect women. You have majors at universities now that you can major in women's studies. And I don't even know what you do with a degree in women's studies, but I'm sure there's something, because our society is enthralled with women's rights. Okay, we've established that. We know that to be the case. Yet suddenly, criticism becomes hesitant when the conversation turns towards Islam. It's one of the most shocking things you could ever imagine, because the assumptions in Islam about women are some of the most repressive and oppressive and middle-aged, patriarchal that you could ever imagine. Everything that progressive society says is right for women and all of that, Islam is the polar opposite of it. It is everything that progressive Western culture despises. The assumptions in Islam about women are deeply illiberal. And I'm talking like liberal democracy stuff here. Deeply. Western progressivism will detect sexism in a shampoo commercial. I mean, they'll find it in there and say, well, this is inappropriate, this is wrong. And yet, the same people that can find sexism in a shampoo commercial turn around and don't see any sexism, don't see any problem, will not speak up even if they do, of forced veiling of women. Cover your face. Wait a minute. You're going to get mad because they made a shampoo commercial that was highlighting a shampoo that's better for men than it is for women, or something like that. There's sexism there. It's not appropriate. But we're going to turn a blind eye and not even discuss the forced veiling of women? I cannot understand it. It's not that I'm mad about it. I just truly don't get it. Honor killings. Women being killed legally in Sharia law because they dishonored the family by converting, by marrying someone outside the faith, whatever it might be. We're fine with that. Genital mutilation. I mean, you can just go down the list. The coercive family systems, the restrictions on women's autonomy, and the legal inequities that are part of the Muslim world. We just ignore it because it's impolite to criticize. That inconsistency needs to be talked about. Because that's just one part. It's not just about women. That's just an area where it's the most noticeable. I don't think that we are doing, now I know this, we're not doing future generations any favors by continuing whistling past the graveyard of civilizations. John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. John Jay, one of the authors of the Federalist Papers, he wrote Federalist Number 2. I'm guessing you've never read Federalist Number 2. I'm going to read to you a portion of Federalist Number 2. I want you to hear these words and contrast them with where we are now. This is what John Jay wrote, Federalist Number 2. Quote, "With equal pleasure, I have as often taken notice that Providence, God has been pleased to give this one connected country to one united people." United. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. United people. Now listen. A people descended from the same ancestors, speaking the same language, professing the same religion, and attached to the same principles of government, very similar in their manners and customs. He is praising God for giving this country to a unified people that have the same ideas about government and the principles that underlie them. What are those? What are those underlying principles that we're talking about? Let me read this other line real quickly. "A strong sense of the value and blessings of union induced the people at a very early period to institute a federal government to preserve and perpetuate it." So what are the shared assumptions? That, how about this? Disagreement does not justify violence. You ought to be able to disagree civilly. That's a Western principle. And we created a government to preserve that. That's what John Jay is saying in Federalist Number 2. Okay, let's take that one. Disagreement does not justify violence. That is not what Islamic society believes. Go to any Islamic society in the world where it operates and runs as the majority system. It does not agree with that disagreement doesn't justify violence. No, some disagreement, if you blaspheme the prophet, if you draw a cartoon of the prophet, Muhammad, no, it justifies violence, justifies your execution. How about this one? Dissenters may speak freely. That's a Western principle, and we created a government to protect it. That's the whole First Amendment. Islamic society does not embrace that. Religious minorities possess equal dignity. No, not in Islamic societies. You know this. We know all of these things. That the law belongs to the state rather than sectarian enforcement. The church doesn't enforce the law and vice versa. That's not how it works. It does work that way in Islamic societies. Citizens can coexist despite strong moral disagreement. These assumptions did not emerge accidentally. They developed in the West after years of moral struggle. That these things were formed and shaped largely around Christian assumptions about human dignity and about conscience and about moral equality before God, the separation of the ultimate allegiances between God and political coercion, all of that. So that raises a question that modern elites are not willing to have, and we have to. Are all civilizations equally compatible? And the answer is no, they are not. And it's not rude to say that. In fact, it's rude not to acknowledge it. It's rude to say there is nothing special about this system that we have. It's rude to say there is nothing special about what was created here and achieved here. There's something rude and extraordinarily ungrateful to say that we have not received immense blessings because of a foundation dramatically different than so many other systems in the world. If a civilization forms radically different assumptions than the ones that we have, pretending those differences don't matter, that is not compassion. It's not being nice. It's naive, because a mature society ought to be able to do two things at once. Number one, it should extend dignity to people while at the same time, number 2, evaluating ideas honestly. I'll put it this way, and then I'll ask you for your thoughts. A civilization that is unwilling to distinguish between moral frameworks that strengthen liberty and the ones that strain it. If you are unwilling as a culture to distinguish between those societies that strengthen liberty and the assumptions and the frameworks that strengthen liberty versus those that strain or stress human liberty, you will eventually, as a people, discover that tolerance, when you remove discernment and you remove judgment, that tolerance becomes something dangerously close to surrender. Those are my thoughts. I'm interested in yours. Peter at peterheck.com. That is Peter at peterheck.com. It's thinking biblically. And it's just thinking, which I would assume it's probably time we start doing. peterheck.com. Those of you who are pit crew members, gosh, I would love it if you'd all join the pit crew, help sustain this ministry. Yes, but also get some great deals on merchandise, which, by the way, I've got something to reveal to those of you who are pit crew members that's going to be available to you. Oh, you're going to love it. Love it, I'm telling you. So I'll do that in the extra mile that's coming at you soon. Those of you who are just typical subscribers, great to have you. Free subscribers, great to have you aboard. Would love it if you join the pit crew, become part of that tight-knit community. But regardless, whether you do or don't, I'll see you next week for more of this, the Dashboard Jesus podcast. Adios.